spectrum. So we've got food, regular, you know, carrots, celery, lettuce, whatever, that stuff. Then we've got superfoods, so the really densely nutritious foods that you can eat on a regular basis. It's slightly medicinal, but you can't overdose on it. You're just getting more nutrients and support for your body. And then on the other end of the spectrum are the medicinal herbs. And now I'm starting to understand that even in the herbs, you've got the spectrum of the tonic herbs. So like Podarco is considered a tonic herb. You can have it every day. It's not going to build up toxins in your system. The same as greens, I might not choose to have it every day. I might want to have rotation because variety is good, but I'm not going to have some weird side effect from it. So the tonic herbs, and then farther down the spectrum would be herbs for medicinal use that you want to have maybe a practitioner tell you, here's what interferes with it, these drugs don't take with it, don't put it with that herb, how long you should use it. So I've gone by what people have said, hey, this goes well together. I've gone by what I've seen on websites, and if it says a tonic herb, then my mind goes, ah, great, you know, no sweat, can take that. And then the spices, like when we make the elixir, the spices are just as valuable as the herbs as a medicinal kind of quality. So like cinnamon, like chai spices, cinnamon, this is the Indian version of herbs, cinnamon, clove, ginger, allspice, cardamom, that throwing those in, then you're getting benefit from the spices. And especially as we're in the colder months, it's really nice to have those warming ingredients. And the spices really, they bring out flavor, but they also warm your body, and they're doing beneficial stuff in there. So, and as we go through the elixir recipe, I'll explain what those things are. So I'm going to talk to you about this herbal elixir thing and how this works. So basically all day long I have had on warm, so on a kind of a simmer on the stove, this mix of herbs. So this is without the water in it because it's been drained into the Vitamix. It's got about a quarter cup of Podarco, a quarter cup of cat's claw. I'll explain what these things do in a minute once I can get back to my notes. About a quarter cup of goji berries that have been chopped so that their seeds are exposed. It has more surface area exposed. This is the shell of a vanilla bean, so I scraped out the inside of the vanilla bean to use later, and I put the shell in, and it has about a half an inch of ginger that's been grated, and some of it just kind of tossed in there, like shell and all. Oh, and a quarter cup of coconut flakes. So this is a recipe I learned from Daniel Vitalis, who's like the elixir king. I don't know how long he's been playing with the stuff, but clearly a long time because he knows his stuff. And this is what he made for us. So the Podarco is, both of these are barks. So this is what's in it, the cat's claw and the Podarco. Podarco is a antifungal. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but it's a tonic, it's an antifungal. I was reading about it recently. A friend of mine said, I've got candida, what I do, and like Podarco tea is a really great thing to do for candida yeast infection stuff because it's antifungal. And then cat's claw is antiviral, and it grows near Podarco, which is one of the reasons that they get paired together, that they go together really well. Also, these are barks. I mean, you can see it looks like tree bark, because it is a tree bark. And with a bark kind of herb, you do this long time simmering because it's really extracting all of the properties and nutrients from the bark. This nettle leaf, I kind of learned the hard way, doesn't like to be simmered for a long time because it's got like all these really light oils in the leaf, and it gets really mushy and icky. So if you're combining leaves with barks, do the barks first and then add the leaf at the last bit. It's kind of like if you drink tea, you know?
Don't you mean the other way around?
Do the bark, simmer the bark, and add the leaf at the last bit.
Yeah, that's not what you said.
Okay. Do the bark, simmer the bark for a long time, add the leaf at the last bit. And leaves are a lot like tea leaves. I mean, that's how our whole tradition of tea kind of came about. It was a medicinal pick-me-up or various uses of teas, and you know, you can do that too. Most of the teas might not have the same potency or quality that you will get from an herb shop, and they might be pretty basic. So like peppermint is really good for stomach indigestion and headachy kind of stuff. And chamomile and peppermint together, really good for sleep. And so you can find all these ancient wisdoms about how to use leaves. You don't find a lot of teas made out of bark. And I think a lot of that is because you actually have to simmer it for a longer period of time. So he suggests 45 minutes as a minimum, up to 12 hours on a bark. Whereas a leaf, you can infuse it in like 5 minutes and be ready to go. So that's that. Ginger, I read so much about ginger, how awesome ginger is. Ginger is great for muscle pains and specifically menstrual pains. It's good for nausea. It's good for antiviral. It's all kinds of good stuff. So that's one of the reasons ginger is in there. The other one that I've used is galangal, which is like an Asian version of ginger. It's a little pepperier, and it's anti-inflammatory. But it looks just like ginger. You just go to the Asian grocery store and it'll say galangal on it. So here's the principle of it, and here's how I've been playing with this component, is to, instead of doing this big long process where I have the big huge pot and I put all those barks in there, I've gone to the grocery store and looked in the tea aisle, and you'll find traditional medicinal teas. That's like the brand name, traditional medicinals. There are a couple other brands, and even on Mountain Rose Herbs, they have teas already put together for you of, here's the women's tension tamer, here's the men's hormonal balance formula, here's the sinus congestion relief tea, here's the afternoon pick-me-up tea, and then they've got all these names on them, and they've already put together the herbs, so you don't have to do a bunch of research to figure out which bark goes with which, whatever. Super easy. So you can just shop by what's going on with me, or what do I think is going to go on with me, what kinds of times am I going to want to drink an elixir, and buy the tea already made. The Mountain Rose Herbs I like because they're loose leaf, so you don't have the tea bag. I think the traditional medicinal teas are usually pretty good. I've gotten a couple teas lately that I was reading the ingredients, and it's like an herbal tea, and I'm like, why does this contain soy? It has soy in it, and I think they might be using it in the tea bag or something, or it's just like ridiculous. And it tastes kind of funky too. I'm not sure what's going on there. So, watch the ingredients, but basically put a pot of water, however much water of tea you're going to drink, or twice that if you want to have maybe a couple glasses over the day or two, and put your herbs in. And then with the herbs, instead of just doing a straight tea, because that can be really boring and it can often taste bad, like traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, kind of gets a bad rap sometimes because the teas taste like crap, and it's hard to get it down. Like, it's good for you, but you have to take it every day before you see any influence, and it tastes like shit. So the cool thing about an elixir is that in addition to whatever tea you're using, you add a sweetener like a berry. So goji berry is really awesome, really high in antioxidant. You could use blueberry, you could use blackberry, you could use cherry, some kind of berry. You could use raisin even, like some kind of fruit as a natural sweetener to the tea base. And then a coconut oil or coconut flakes as a fat. I've done both. I've thrown in coconut flakes into my little mini elixir, and I've also just put coconut oil straight in. And then let that simmer for a bit. How long you simmer depends on what you're putting in. If you've got leaves in, then like maybe 5 minutes. If you've got barks in, then do a half hour, 45 minutes. If you're doing both, start with the bark, add the leaves for the last 5 minutes. Okay? Very simple. And then strain that into a cup. And that's basically what I've done here in our bigger version, is I've strained the herb mixed tea into a blender, but in this case, in a small version, you strain it into a cup. And then what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a nut milk out of this, which is a much more involved process. So the super quick version is add some nut milk from a container, add some coconut milk, add some almond milk, or a little bit of both, and just pour it. So you're only filling your cup maybe halfway of the tea that's been strained, and the rest is your coconut milk. So it's kind of a creamy consistency. So you've got a sweet, fat tea, and then you're adding more like yummy creaminess from the coconut milk, and then you'll add any additional superfoods or spices. If you want it chocolatey, you add in a little chocolate powder. You want cinnamon, chai, you add in your spices and stir and drink, and you're done. Super easy. Okay. So here's the long version around. So I've got, this is the tea from this. It's been thankfully cooled a little bit because this is going to get really hard on my hands if it weren't. This is a 1/4 cup of coconut flakes.
And strained as well, right?
Strained, right. I got about a 1/2 inch of ginger, which I'll grate into here. My Vitamix can handle it, but it's nice to kind of give it a head start. And then I've got a 1/4 cup of almonds and a 1/4 cup of cashews. And this recipe, this big long recipe I'm doing, is on the website. It's called Superfood Elixir. It's just a lot more involved process, and it's nice to be able to do a quick cup of tea that is more than tea. So I'll get this in here, and then I've got a 1/4 cup of almonds that have been soaked and a 1/4 cup of cashews that have been soaked. And I did like a quick version of this, well, quick. I did a version of this where I was doing the whole nut milk thing and I wasn't really paying attention to my directions. And I think I put in all cashews and I put in more than what was said, and it was like really rich. So I do suggest mixing them. All cashews would be kind of too much. All almonds, you might not have enough kind of sense of fat. You'll have some of that kind of fatty taste from the coconut flakes and the coconut flakes that were in the tea to begin with. All right, so here's my ginger. There. Oh, and if it's a bark, you might be able to get a second round out of this. If it's a leaf, no way. Tried that, icky, gross. But the bark, you might be able to get a second play on it, depending on how long you've been simmering it, how much goodness you've already gotten out of there. All right, so there's my almonds and there's my cashews. And this is really, I mean, for making a nut milk on its own, as simple as it gets too. Throw in some nuts, throw in some water. If you want spice or anything, throw that into and blend and then strain. So, pardon the noise.
Now, is that a nut milk bag that you have?
No, this is, I'm glad you brought that up. I was just going to explain. This is a paint straining bag.
A what?
For paint straining bag. So I went to like a paint store and said, can I get a paint straining bag? And I think this cost me 10 cents. You can get these as a official nut milk straining bag for like 10 bucks. Yeah. So I highly recommend the paint store version. I mean, it comes clean. Use it over and over again. I have a little bit of tear in mine because it had a tag on it, and when I cut the tag off, I got a hole, but I just haven't bothered to pay another 10 cents to get another bag.
So you could get them at Home Depot or Lowe's?
I imagine you could. I went to Sherwin-Williams because I happened to see a paint store. I'm like, paint store. Need a paint straining bag. But
okay,
yeah.
Paint straining bag.
Paint straining bag, yeah. That's what it looks like.
Interesting.
And it's a nylon mesh bag. Some of the fancy nut milk bags in the raw food world you'll see are like made out of cotton or like non-nylon because they're concerned about the nylon, but I'm not concerned about nylon. Yeah, and I mean the liquid's passing through here fast enough and I use it so little it doesn't seem worth it. So so here's my little setup. I've got my jar container to catch the liquid. I've got a strainer, mostly so that I have a place to rest my paint straining bag because it's going to get hot. Thankfully, this is sat for a little bit, so it's not overly hot, but I'm going to be straining with my hands, so I need to be able to touch it, which means that it's nice to be able to just let it sit for a little bit. So, and then, let's see, does that camera come down to the table? Should I bother moving things?
Yeah, that's right.
You guys can see the process too. So, here's my nut milk. Super nut milk because it's got elixir tea in there. And I guess I'll set up here so I can pour easily into my bag. And basically what I'm doing is if there are any fibers from the nuts, which can kind of be an irritant to your digestive tract, and any remaining fibers from the herbs that I didn't catch in my straining are now not going to be in my end result, because it's going through this fine mesh bag. And so my technique is to just keep twisting as the liquid comes out. if you're doing the short version of this, you would have basically just poured in some coconut milk into half of your tea. Super simple.
Are you going to post the easy way?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not up there yet, but it will. All right, so now I'm going to turn this into a Superfood Elixir shake.